Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Iowa Hawkeyes heading on the road to play Ohio State until, don't look now, this Iowa offense averaging almost 30 points per game, 57th in the country in scoring offense. We've talked a lot of Iowa football in our day. I don't think we've seen a number that high, mostly on the ground. And they're toting one of the more impressive running backs we've seen to start the 2024 season in Caleb Johnson. Now, the problem is you're going on the road playing an Ohio State defense that's been elite to start the 2024 season, particularly against the run, only giving up 1.9 yards per carry. That's fourth best in the country. A lot of really interesting matchups to dive into this one's particularly, how does this Iowa rushing attack, specifically that outside zone scheme, go up against an Ohio State defensive lineman in that front seven that it's really, really athletic, hard to run against. Fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and the amount of support y'all have shown for these game preview prediction episodes. It's been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different ways you can see this game. And Dill, without further ado, got the Iowa Hawkeye wrestling shirt on right now. Let's start with this Iowa offense going up against this Ohio State defense. You got to dig into the rushing attack, right? I think we look at this matchup and say, I don't see Cade McNamara and these Iowa wide receivers getting much going down the field against an Ohio State secondary that's elite. How does Iowa begin to run the football against an Ohio State defense that has also been very good stopping the run to start 2024?
And that's the tough part for Iowa, frankly, is what you've seen from them so far. I think their offensive line's taken a massive step. I think that's where it starts. I think they're doing a much better job getting up to linebackers. And that Caleb Johnson, like they have a guy now who can hit explosive plays. Like they're not doing it from the pass game, obviously, but they have a running back who, if he gets a crack of space, has been making things happen. They've been a much more explosive offense on his back. Now, when you're playing Ohio State, I mean, their defensive line is a wildly underrated bunch, in my opinion, especially on the inside. And what they've been doing without Tyleik Williams, Hamilton stepping up here, Okano playing really, really good ball. I kind of wonder if Iowa has the power, the size, the strength that they'll need to move around that Ohio State offensive line and then get up to some linebackers who I think you've seen some moments of them not playing through blocks as well as you'd probably like to. And that's being a little bit nitpicky. But again, when you're talking about maybe some possible flaws in Ohio State's game, there's not a ton. So you kind of got to find what you can find. And that maybe is something Iowa can attack a little bit.
Yeah, and I look at what's going to be particularly difficult for Iowa against Ohio State's front is how athletic this Ohio State defensive line is. Like you've seen Iowa have success with some of that outside zone stuff against defensive linemen that just aren't great moving laterally along the lines of scrimmage. This is an Ohio State defensive line that, although are big and strong, are certainly really good athletes too. But I think it's more bookended by two edge defenders that I think, yeah, they're really good pass rushers. These two kids are hammers against the run, particularly Jack Sawyer. You look at Iowa trying to get to the perimeter, trying to go off tackle. It's so hard to do it when you have someone like Jack Sawyer who is so consistent setting edges. Again, it doesn't necessarily show up in the box score with Jack Sawyer, but you turn on the film and say, I don't think it gets much better in terms of edge rushers that are better at defending the run than Ohio State.
It's hard to create those creases that Iowa's really done a good job with because obviously Jack Sawyer, the way he can set edges, it's a lot more physical than a lot of teams, a lot more athletic. And that, to me, you said it. Iowa's done a good job of stretching teams out, making their linebackers play really, really well and hunt the ball at a really high level and pick through traffic. Again, I think if Ohio State, if their guys play the way they're supposed to, I think they do a really good job of keeping those linebackers clean. And at the very least, Ohio State's got the athleticism in that linebacker.
Yeah, and I think to even piggyback on the athletic linebackers, you got two hammers as safeties who are elite coming in and stopping the run, and Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs. I would expect Ohio State to, even if they have trouble stopping the run, I would expect some safeties walking into the box and showing Iowa some heavy boxes. Because again, you look at this Iowa offense, particularly going up against this Ohio State defense, it's going to be kind of one-dimensional. I don't see Iowa creating a ton of separation and a ton of explosive plays down the field against this Ohio State secondary. That's just not a matchup that you want to go after. So you're kind of giving Ohio State that opportunity to walk Ransom into the box, walk Caleb Downs in the box, two safeties that are very good coming up into the tackle box and being a factor in the run game. I think you're
Now,
going to see
now
a
I
lot.
will say, in the past game, do you have any concerns about the linebackers' eyes from Ohio State? Because I felt like against Michigan State, you saw some moments where they were letting those tight ends kind of get into the flat, not being covered, and make some plays. And you look, Iowa, at least they do have pretty good tight ends. I think Estrang is playing really, really well. We know Luke Lachey is really, really good. Do you have any concerns about Ohio State? Like, again, younger, more inexperienced linebackers outside of Simon, who's playing at a really high level. Do you have any concerns that they can't? I mean, again, just trying to find something.
Yeah,
Moving
on a consistent basis, probably not. To be honest, like I have a very hard time seeing Iowa maybe kind of some of that short intermediate stuff because that'd probably be the answer. Because again, attacking the deeper third, Cade McNamara, I think extremely limited in terms of him pushing the ball down the field. You look at the numbers, 4.7 yards per pass attempt. That's 130th in the country. Like they are not an explosive group throwing the football. I don't think that's breaking news. So if they do have success in the passing attack, it probably does come from what you're saying, getting some short intermediate stuff going, specifically off play action. I think the success in the passing game will be very contingent on how well they're able to run the football. Like if they don't get the ground game going, they're not able to go to play action as much. I do think it'll be a long day for Iowa on the offensive side of the football. Dill, let's flip the script here. Talk about this Ohio State offense that, again, we just talked about the defense being really good. The Ohio State offense, been elite too, scoring 49 points per game, number 3 in the country. Though they're not running the football as much as I think a lot of people thought they were going to heading into the season. Like it's a pretty even 50-50 split running the football 50.7% of the time. That's only 76 in the country. Now, when they do decide to run the football, you got Judkins and Travion Henderson averaging over 8 yards per carry. It's a very efficient ground game. And then you look at the passing attack and say, they're using Will Howard exactly how he's meant to be used. Like they're not treating him like CJ Stroud. They're not asking him to push the ball down the field. His average depth of target's only 7.6 yards down the field. They're relying on yards after the catch. Now, the good thing for Ohio State is they got a ton of wide receivers that can operate after the catch, headlined by Emeka and Jeremiah Smith. Dill, you know Iowa's going to run that cover too. How do you see Will Howard getting after this Iowa defense?
And that is my fundamental question: is can he keep the ball out of harm's way? Because he's put the ball there. That's been the one thing you've seen from him that I don't think you love. And one thing, he's been really accurate, frankly. Like the ball's placement has been really sound, but he is throwing in the coverage. He had a couple against Michigan State that were a couple get picked, or not, or just the one.
And he's done that going back to Kansas State too. Like that's not like a new problem for Will Howard in Columbus. Like that's been a thing we've talked about with how Will Howard.
Like again, it's those things like predetermining the routes, throwing the ball without like being aware of where the zone coverage is. Like those things, again, Iowa really preys on teams who do it. Will Howard, it's not been like a big problem, obviously. They haven't played anyone who I think can expose it up to this point. But it is something you definitely got to watch because he has still been doing it, and the same habits from Kansas State have shown up a little bit.
And I'm not saying that Will Howard can't do it. It's just Ohio State's not asking him to do it that often. Like only 7.6% of his attempts are going 20 plus yards down the field. How do you want to attack cover two? You probably want to try to push the ball down the field. Like it's going to be, I think, tough to work the underneath stuff. A lot of the stuff that I think Ohio State has kind of primarily relied on early in the season. Again, I'm not saying they can't do it. We just don't see it that often from Ohio State just yet. The Ohio State secondary, or excuse me, the Iowa secondary hasn't been as good as we're used to talking about. Like you take a look at the numbers, allowing a 62% completion percentage, that's 77th in the country, 7.2 yards per pass, that's 70th in the country. We're not used to talking about an Iowa secondary that's 70th in the country in just about anything. I wonder if Ohio State, again, particularly working kind of that deeper third, you've seen Iowa give up some explosive plays going back to Iowa State game. Can Ohio State make it happen against Iowa? And that's kind of
and I frankly think part of it, it's not all in the secondary. I don't think this pass rush been nearly as good as I would thought. I kind of look like you've seen guys so good coming through this Iowa program on that defensive line, especially really, really great pass rushes. Again, Graves a really solid player. I think he is good. But other than him, I don't know that they have guys who are winning a ton of just one-on-one pass rush reps. And that's hurting when you play the zone, like the zone scheme they like to do. It really does help to have that quarterback's clock ticked up. And I look at that Minnesota game. I mean, Rosemer had enough time to kind of pick at them and work the ball down the field. if their pass rush doesn't really get rolling, I think that their secondary can't really maximize and be what it is because it's still a loaded unit.
Yeah,
I don't think those numbers are reflecting them. I think they got to play some complementary
that's
football.
fair. And I think then the question is like, does Iowa take some risks and heat Will Howard up? And quite frankly, I think you should. Like, I think if you're Iowa, I don't think you win this football game on the road in Columbus playing conservative defense. I think you have to try to create some of those game-changing plays that we've seen Iowa make and win football games with. That's kind of my question is, does Iowa kind of, because they don't love to bring pressure, does Iowa go to some pressure to kind of heat up Will Howard and maybe force him into making some of those mistakes that we've seen Will Howard be prone to in the past? And then I think I guess the other conversation we got to talk about the rushing attack. Iowa's been really good against the run. They got two of the best backers in the country. I'm kind of interested to see because like Ohio State hasn't really gone up against an elite front seven. Michigan State was solid, but I think Iowa's kind of different. I think they're much better. Does this Ohio State rushing attack still look elite against a front seven that's top 10 in the country right now, only giving up 2.7 yards per carry? Probably the last question you'll want to see get answered for Ohio State. Dill, let's get to the pick here. Ohio State, we got 23.5-point favorites at home. Where are you going with this one?
Given me, I think those offensive stats you read off about Iowa, I don't think are telling the full story. They haven't evolved enough, in my opinion, from the offensive standpoint in terms of opening their offense up. Like they've hit some explosive plays on teams that, I mean, aren't Ohio State. I just don't think they can just lean on running the ball the way they have to. And Cade McNamara is still playing like Cade McNamara at the end of the day. It's just very, very not mediocre, some step below mediocre, and you just can't really be competitive, I don't think, against really good teams when your quarterback's playing the way he plays with no creativity and no playmaking ability.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ohio State in the points too. And for me, it's just kind of a matchup thing. Like it's hard for me to see Iowa have a ton of success running the football against Ohio State's front seven. If they don't have success doing that, like where are they going to have success moving the football? And then the question is, does Ohio State score enough to cover the number? Look, if you consistently give Ohio State chances to score, which I think you're going to get in this football game, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, they're going to figure out a way to score points. Give me Ohio State in the points too. Appreciate you guys. That's all we got. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.